Audiogyan is proud to partner with Unbox Cultural Futures Society and What Design Can Do. What Design Can Do is an international organization that seeks to accelerate the transition to a sustainable, fair, and just society using the power of design. What Design Can Do is launching Make It Circular Challenge, a global design competition building a circular future in partnership with IKEA. This challenge invites designers and creative entrepreneurs from everywhere to submit design driven climate innovations. The end goal? To show the world that circular future is not only imaginable but actionable. Winning projects will be propelled into 2023 with a €10,000 in funding and a tailor made development program. Submit your proposals online for free by 31st Jan 2023. Check out the design briefs and learn more about it on makeitcircular.whatdesigncando.com. Link in the show notes. And now today's episode. This is Audiogyan, and I am your host Kedar Nimkar. Welcome to a deep dive into the minds of luminaries from the Indian creative world. Anton Chekov's famous lines in his book are, if you say in the first chapter that there's a rifle hanging on the wall, in the second or the third chapter, it absolutely must go off. If it's not going to be fired, it shouldn't be hanging there. Well, I guess our today's guest has an innate and instinctive quality to decide what's in the frame and what's not. Be her in her earlier stint as a photojournalist or her avatar as a production designer for numerous films since 2006. I'm pleased to have Meenal Agarwal with us on Audiogyan. She has been a production designer for many films like Ankhon Dekhi, Hitchki, Pari, Bulbul, Dum Laga Ke Haisha, and most recently the Netflix film Qala. So I'm super honored and privileged to have Meenal. Welcome, Meenal, to Audiogyan, and yeah, it's a real honor to have you on the show.
Thank you for having me. I'm looking forward to this.
Super. So I've obviously I've been looking for like really good production designers because that's how I started, or I at least got exposed to art and design back then in my college days when I used to do production for mainly for sets, doing theater. So after that, I haven't been in touch, and I just wanted to understand what happens in production design in the context of films. So I've come up with few questions, and one last one is more of an academic one कि कैसे ये career में आते हैं, but mostly it's about understanding the nuances of production design at large rather than picking. And I would really like if you can give some examples. So because I've not kept the interview more on the example side, like कला में deep नहीं जा रहे हैं क्योंकि वो एक अलग show बनेगा. So
Okay.
yeah. First, I wanted to just start off by asking your sort of definition of design or definition of film rather. What does a film mean to you? And if I'm guessing it correctly, apart from story, what are other things that really matter to you as a production designer, as a creative person?
Hmm. For me, to begin with, film is storytelling, just like a book, just like a photograph, or just like a painting, or like any medium. You're telling a story, and each person, each director has his way of writing or telling a story. And I feel that film has so many things as a medium that support it. It's got sound, it's got lights, it's got backdrops, it's got actors, it's got so many things. In a book, you have words, and in a picture, you have a frame, and in a painting, you have that one thing. And so I feel that you have so many things supporting your storytelling that, you don't need words to tell an emotion,
Mhm.
which I know that India is a country where it's a narrative culture, and we've been passing our storytelling is through words and stuff like that. And so a lot of times I have to argue with people that because film is a visual medium and it has all these things. Like, I like Raymond Carver as a writer. And I remember when I first picked him up some 20 years back, I didn't really pick it up. after reading the first page. Then I picked him up again for some reason a year later, and I was so depressed. I was depressed for a month after reading his short stories. And then I picked him up again after 2, 3 years, or maybe 4, 5 years, and I found the humor in it. And his short stories are really like 5 pages, 6 pages, and it's just about relationships. And there's not really a beginning or an end. Like I think Robert Altman has made a movie on his called Shortcuts,
Mhm.
but I haven't seen it yet because
Yeah.
I want to make a short film on one of his short stories one day and see if I can translate the same emotion. So basically, for me, filmmaking is if what Carver does with his short stories is like in 5 pages, tell me a story, an emotion, a lifetime of somebody, and I can identify with those people at some level, whoever it is, like it, even if it is fantastical, you still, enjoy it as a viewer if I can enjoy that, and therefore as a filmmaker, because I consider myself a filmmaker, if I can tell a story like that without having to say it out loud, if I can, in a moment, if one moment can be identifiable, if a moment can tell a lifetime, for me, that is what is exciting about any storytelling, in that sense. And
Mhm.
films have everything larger than life, like you go to a cinema hall, you shut yourself in darkness, and then you are giving yourself up to that world for 2 hours. And so it takes you a few minutes. Like I remember seeing the beginning of Age of Innocence, and all these women had these very strong lipsticks and lipstick color, and hair was so made up. I was like, it took me a while, and then I've gotten into it, and then I've
Mm.
given into the world, and I'm involved in it. And for 2 years, I've forgotten any other world but this world that I'm in this dark space. It's like watching Ram Diary. Uh, the first scene, you see the plane coming in, a red plane swooping down the ocean, uh, and you're in it.
Mm.
Like some
Correct.
movies take time, some movies just take you in. It depends. But it's the world that I have to get you in. I have to get you into this world as a storyteller. And that's for any story. So, yeah. So, what was your question?
No,
That this
I
is
just,
filmmaking and this is what it is.
yeah,
Sorry.
yeah. No, but then I mean,
A
because
production
you,
design.
yeah, because you come from that background. Because when you look at theater, there in experimental theater also a lot of people, the actors just set up a stage which you can leave it for the audience's imagination.
Yeah.
Isn't like, do you see they sort of juxtaposed to each other or conflicting with each other? Any
No, it's like actually, Rajat has been very influential in the way I think about a lot of things. And I remember in our early years of when we were dating, he would say that Greek theater, for instance, or theater for that instance, is a gesture. And you do a gesture, and that is supposed to symbolize anything. And you are supposed to, as an audience, imagine the rest. Not supposed to, they take you there. And they
Hmm.
take you there to imagine with gestures and words without creating in actuality any of these elements, right? You talk about mountains, you talk about the sea, or even any object. You don't really need it physically there, but you can imagine it as an audience because theater has that magic, and but films is depending on the story and the storytelling and all of that, it's either so realistic that that you need to completely believe the characters, and that can only come with you relating with that world and saying, oh, this is how old Delhi is, or this is how Haridwar is. And then if you have a story like Qala, which is fantastical, then I can take liberties with reality. Or if there's Bansali, he takes liberties with any fact for Bajirao or wherever,
Hmm.
it depends. But the elements mean a lot. Like you're seeing it, and either it has to convince you or it has to alienate you. And that is the balance that you have to find, I feel, in film. While in theater, a lot of it comes with the text and the performance.
Correct, correct,
No.
correct. Yeah. And follow-up question to that was like any two things that matter to you the most in a filmmaking process apart from the main narrative or the story of it?
It's how much the director allows me to participate in the process is very important because I feel that everyone has a certain skill set. Like,
Mm,
I won't be good at casting, or I won't be good at, how actors perform, or whatever, whatever. But I feel, I don't know, maybe it sounds really pompous, but I feel that I can see an entire story. I can see how it should look or it can look like. And if the director allows me to participate, then because what happens is production design is still so gray that a lot of people think that production design is art direction. It's a euphemism for art direction, but it's not. I'm designing as a production designer, I'm designing the look of an entire film, an entire story. That means, and it came into being with Gone in with the Wind, right? It came into being by Cecil DeMille telling his production designer, his art director, that you're a production designer because he could design the costumes and he designed the spaces, and the film had an entire look because he designed the entire production. So it's not like the costume designer didn't do anything, but
mm,
it's just that. So I remember when we were working on Mithya, for instance, which is my second
mm,
film with Rajat,
mm.
and the story has this thing of this character being kidnapped on a boat.
Yes.
And as a photographer, I had taken a picture of the Bombay seas and the fisherman boat at sea. And even if you are shooting in color, it's black and white because our sea is gray, our sky is gray, the boat is black. And in a far silhouette, the man is black. You can't see his color because he's at sea. And the buildings behind, marine drive, are all like gray, like a lighter gray. And I thought that that should be the look of the film, for Mithya, is that you
Mm,
do not have any color. So if you see Mithya, um, and to decide that it would be shot in the monsoons. Now the directors agreed with me and taken my view into full trust and said, okay, because the DOP is saying monsoons, are you mad? Like, how will we shoot in the monsoons in Bombay? But he
mm,
said, no, we'll work it out. So we've shot in the monsoons. So the sky is gray. The
mm.
sea is gray. The Every time your light is a certain gray. There is no flat sunshine. There's no bright sunshine. There are no shadows. And therefore, even in the costumes,
It's
my
just
suggestion
mostly white and
was
black. Yeah.
yes. So all the colors, there is color, but they go into black. So what
Mm,
happens that when you're in the dark, it is black, and when a little light comes on, you see the color. But the color is because it's film and you can see color, but there is no color. Each space moves from a maybe a bright blue to a light blue to a blue green to a gray blue, but they don't ever go into another color except when so it was too much for these two guys, for Rafe and Rajat, and they rebelled. And they said, I like how I've used rebel because it was like, you're convinced to a point and then you're like, no, no, maybe we are going doing something wrong. They said, no, it'll be too boring, there is no color, we need color and all. So they give Neha Dhupia a bright blue dress when she's at
yeah.
the safe house. And then the Hamlet scene is happening, the shoot against the orange door. And these two elements, there's only one person who spotted it, another DOP. I'm sorry, I can't remember his name. And I was so impressed with that DOP because when the film got over, I had friends in the business who didn't know what I had done. And I remember one friend saying, that lampshade was really nice because she didn't know what to say to me. But
Mm,
the film worked, and if you see it, you don't see the work, which is the best thing, like you don't see the
correct.
design in it, but you
Mm,
feel it. And you say, oh, great camera work and great whatever and all of that. But it was designed.
Yeah.
It was designed that way. And so even the boat, the fishing boat, was uncomfortable to shoot in. It was, but it was a black body. The
Mm.
fishing boat that goes out at sea in Bombay is like this beautiful charred black. And if you go to a boat which is convenient, has a lot of color, it's white, it's,
Mm.
drab. So again, there was a lot of convincing and saying like, no, we have to figure a way out. And that's how we do it. So it's the same with like in Dum Laga Ke, the music shop, the cassette shop that is there
Mm.
is
Mm.
very small. So I had the DOP going like, no, I cannot. It's too small. How do I do a track shot here? Like, you don't need a track shot, but see the shop. It's a triangle. It was an actual shop in Haridwar and it was a triangle. And the outside is a triangle because it's a corner shop. So there's a triangle outside and there's a triangle inside. And what more do you want? Because at every point you have perspective. And it's a
Mm.
cassette shop, it's a VHS shop. You have all these lines, the vertical lines going of the tapes. So, it's just like there. And then in that, we've used design with so much fun because in that, there's red only where the wedding happens. It's a mass wedding. And I have seen references of mass weddings, and all the women are in red, the same red. And so we decided that that will be a mass of red. And even the car, they go to pick them up and will be red and all of that. And before and afterwards, there will be no color.
Mm.
And there is no color. But the design on the karnat of the wedding, the print on it, is the design on a pillow cover on her razai. Like that, the print in the house on which the table he works on is the print in the shop. The jali design on the wall behind the is the jali design on the shop ventilation. The print on her pillow cover, which has it's an old block print, is there on her dupatta. So, it's like, it's a realism, it's, you're telling a story of, if I had to do it, I would say, okay, I have to do a real house and I have to do these things. But it's no fun. I'm not making a documentary. You
Mm.
know, if I was doing a documentary, okay, I'd go close to the truth. My work here is to make it look interesting and still be convincing. Like, the characters cannot be alienated from the space they're in. You cannot feel that they don't belong. Then what is this shit? Or not be repulsed by it either, because like Dum Laga Ke is a charming story. And so is Ankhon Dekhi a charming story. Now, Ankhon Dekhi was, again, when Rajat wrote it, it's like when you're reading the script, you see, and we are reading it in 2010. So you're saying he's talking about letterpress printing, he's talking about landlines,
Mm.
he's talking about things. So obviously, when he's writing this, he's writing it in the 80s. And it
Mm.
is quite autobiographical, this film, it is his
Mm.
growing up in Delhi and all of that. So, and these are the clues when you're reading a script. So it's not like officially it's an 80s period film, but there's a lot of it that you take as a clue to designing, like the costumes are from the 80s. So Isha and
Mm.
Darshan, who were the costume people, would be like, my chacha used to wear this bomber jacket in the winters every time, every morning in Ranchi and this and that. So all the costume references would come from that time. And for me, somehow, like I'm not from Delhi, but somehow Delhi had a lot of brown. I don't know why I have a feeling of browns associated with that city in the
Beige.
winters.
Yeah. Yeah.
People wear like brown sweaters or I don't know, different shades of browns. So I said that that we will use browns in the winters. And then because it's a lifespan in some ways, is Bauji's discovery of what he's about. It's your life is changing and you are changing. And it's not overnight. Happens over a span of time. You cannot treat, I mean, you can, but it's just that we also wanted to have fun. So we said, okay, so you go with winter, then you go into spring, and then you go into summer. and then you go into Shadi when Rita gets married.
Hmm.
So the thing is, so the winters is a lot of browns, the quilts, the bed sheets and things, and the exterior wall is this ochre where the toothbrush scene and all of that, the angan is, and all of that. And then we move into spring, where we did a little bit of print on the walls. The walls from a deep blue become lighter blue, like Neil ka blue, and the costumes get color in it, flowers in it. Like
Hmm.
Rita's sweater has flowers, and the crockery changes. So the chai that they had earlier in the winters in steel glasses. Because I remember my dadi telling me, my dadi from Jaipur said, सर्दियों में स्टील का ग्लास में चाय पीना चाहिए वो गर्म ज्यादा दे देगा because it has a narrow opening. And in the summer, you have it in a chini mitti ka cup and plate because the chai gets cooler faster.
Hmm.
So that was the thing for the season. So when you
Amazing.
start with chai in the steel in the winter, and then when spring happens, I've used the chini ka cup with flowers on it and things like that. The vegetables and all in the kitchen is all seasonal. And then we go into summer. So then the chatai comes and the walls become white, the clothes become white, everything goes into a summer vibe. And you see the light change, Rafe, that creates this vibe of summer in the house and Bauji is giving his feel on things. And then when the daughter gets married, we go into pinks and lilacs and all of that and reds. तब तो घर की सफाई होती है ना पुताई होती है सब होता है सब सजावट
Hmm.
होती है then the walls look new and all of that but the thing
Yeah.
is every time people don't see it the audience doesn't see it. Nobody's seen, and very few people register what we've done. And I thought, maybe people, you don't think first when you're making or working towards something, but you say, okay, people might think, oh, you're trying too hard or whatever. But, it's amazing when we did RK. You've seen it?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Obviously, we spoke about it on the podcast.
Ah,
And
okay.
Ankhon Dekhi is one of my favorite films, all-time favorites.
Oh,
Yeah.
so there also we changed from white to black, and nobody saw it.
Hmm.
Even
Hmm.
Shakun Batra, who had come to see the film, and he's a keen observer as a filmmaker and director. He'll notice the artworks and things like that. And he didn't notice it. And
Hmm.
I feel that that's very successful because you think you're doing something overtly, whatever, but you also want to have fun doing what you're doing. And the story has to come in some ways in design. It cannot be like for me, it's very boring to be representative of something. It has to be more than just a representation. We are storytellers and we are storytellers with design. You have to be bringing more to the element than just picking up things which anybody can do. What are you doing with design?
Yeah.
Or what are you doing as storytellers? And you're saying fiction. It's not even like I'm doing a biography on somebody, or something like that.
Yeah, I remember. In fact, this is so fascinating, all that you shared just now, because one of the greatest, I think, designers called Dieter Rams. He said that
Ah,
one of the principles of good design is that it's invisible. And I think
yes.
if people are not noticing, I think it's an
Yeah,
hundred
that's
percent compliment
shocking.
for.
I'm yeah, I'm shocked because I'm like, oh, अभी बोले ये तक कुछ ज्यादा नहीं कर दिया तुमने और मैं उसे तो देखा ही नहीं. Like,
Yeah.
it's just
Yeah,
yeah, but Dieter
but
Rams
I
is
think
like
people will notice when.
emotionally
No,
maybe.
no, it's if it's wrong. I mean, if it's little
Okay,
off,
okay.
they will notice. Like I was just looking at one
Hmm.
Anurag Kashyap's comment on Qala, and he said that the
Oh, is it?
ambulance in the last screen, like last few
Uh,
minutes, was little out of place, because even I could spot when
oh,
I saw it, and
uh,
that's why it resonated with me. And I said
right.
it little
Hmm.
off the entire
Yeah.
theme.
झटका लगता है थोड़ा
हाँ, तो
या
थोड़ा-सा जब
या
कुछ गलत होता है तो पीपल
हाँ
पॉइंट आउट आई थिंक
खटकता है या
करेक्ट.
that's true I know actually I should count my blessings then
Cool.
कि वो नहीं
Uh,
हुआ
uh,
mostly I mean I'm sure
Yeah, yeah. So Meenal, मुझे like actually बहुत सारे questions है, but just as a good segue, because you mentioned couple of projects that you worked on, and I was having, when people can go and listen to Rajat's talk also, in there I asked him some question, and he quoted someone, and Alfred Hitchcock को पूछा कि like how is the new film going on, and he said, oh, it's done, I just need to shoot it. Right. Yeah, so so it's basically making every frame and every sort of scene very clear in the director's mind, right? So most of
Hmm.
the time, at least in India, from whatever I know, ऐसा कुछ प्रोडक्शन डिजाइनर, ऐसा कुछ टर्म या आई डोंट नो स्पेसिफिक कोई था नहीं, राइट? मोस्ट ऑफ द स्टफ लाइक डायरेक्टर्स बोल रहे हैं, कैमरामैन बोल रहे हैं यहाँ रखो, ये रखो, प्रॉपर्टी कुछ लाओ.
Yeah, yeah,
So
correct.
like how did this come to be, like production design? Was it sort of the improving the quality of narrative, or is it more attention to detail? Is it just because we started making things at scale, तो एक dedicated कोई चाहिए ये सब देखने के लिए? Like any thoughts you have around why or how did it come to be?
Why it happened? I have no idea. I know that it started, the history was Gone with the Wind. But otherwise, in India, I think it's a copying a lot of what Americans did. But for me, it's interesting because I don't know how it started, but I felt that um, like I don't think many people on our cruise are very savvy with design. And by design, I mean in terms of not just spaces or things like that, but in terms of how the colors go together. It's like when I was reading Joseph Albert's Ravi, I was so like interested because there are some things I've learned over the years. And for him, it's the introduction of his book, which I have read now. But I have learned this just by the sheer thing of just practicing it, is that like each color influences each other. So when I'm showing a director certain colors earlier, and even now, a lot of people will show colors next to each other to say which one do you want to use for a wall, for instance, or
Hmm.
something. But if I put this color with this color, it's going to affect this color. It's like a certain kind of green with a certain kind of blue, they go together, but a certain kind of green is like, suppose it's really muddy, and I put it with this different color, it's going to look like shit, this muddy green. But this muddy green on its own in another space will be wonderful. It'll give that space certain character, you know. And if I, so it has to be on its own. I cannot let another color influence it,
Hmm.
you know.
Hmm.
And so I'm saying that even as a cameraman, you're not so sensitive to this. Even as a director, you're not so sensitive to this. Even as a costume person, you're not so sensitive to this, other than how your clothes go well together. So I felt that, you know, like a story needed, I don't know. And it's really my journey because, like, when I worked with Suzanne, she was doing ads. So we really didn't do any production design. So it's really been my journey in saying that this is how I can influence your story. This is what we can make to have fun with it. It's like, I remember Raghu Romeo, Raj's first film, I was doing continuity stills for them. I was
Hmm.
officially a photographer, and um, I had gone to this village in Maharashtra where in the houses on the ceiling, they had used gift wrapping paper to, I don't know, to decorate or something. And as a photographer, I was like, wow, that's such an interesting element. And so for Raghu Romeo, we used print on print. And it was a suggestion to Rajat. And it continues through the film when you see it. The production designer was somebody else, but he was more like an art director. So I don't know how it happened and what happened, but I feel that one, you are right with the last bit that it does make life simpler. And when you're making big films, there's this one person who's taking charge of all this. It leaves the director free to do so many other things. You know, they don't have to worry about. And a lot of times you also find that there are directors who are great storytellers, but they are not visually savvy in terms of
Mm.
design. So what you do is you take that over from them. It's a headache that they do not have to think of. Like it's off their shoulders. And you take care of how it's going to look cohesively as one story, how it's going to be. So it was a vacuum. Because earlier you had art directors who created a nice interior space, but um it was an element like how costumes is and how lighting would be and all of that. But either the director or DOP, if they were smart, would get it into looking like one whatever. But now we are specializing and we are honing this storytelling maybe. I don't know. I don't know if I can give you a
Yeah.
correct answer,
No,
like
it's
a
yeah, I think
appropriate answer for this.
correct,
But
correct.
yeah, it's an interesting question, but पता नहीं.
ठीक है एंड मतलब आपका जो आंसर्स है वो एकदम लाइक वेरी नेचुरली फिटिंग इनटू माय नेक्स्ट क्वेश्चन एज अ सेगवे
Oh,
बिकॉज
good.
कि then since you said that you take off the load from the director or like these people, so आपके like experience maybe and in general also by and large, like who are the key stakeholders that you work with, I mean at a ground level, क्योंकि अगर वापस रजत सर को
Hmm.
पॉइंट करना होगा तो like I remember he saying that I don't know what I'm going to shoot, I just start rolling, and then
Hmm.
fortunately I have been working with the same DOP for quite some time. I usually work with the
Yeah.
same actors, so they're improvising on the set. So in that context it will be difficult or it will be different, but मोटा मोटा like who's the stakeholders, क्या आप हमेशा किन लोगों के साथ काम करते हो या आर्ट डायरेक्ट प्रोडक्शन डिजाइनर किन के साथ काम करते हैं?
Okay. For production designers, I think the two key people is one key person is your DOP
Hmm.
because you really have to be on the same page as the DOP, and the DOP has to be on the same page as you. Because a lot of times when you're making a set, it can look like nothing on earth. And a lot of times, if you're talking about colors, if they do not understand, then it's a fight. Then it's a discussion on how you frame. It's a discussion on anything and everything to do with your work, which is connected with his work or her work. Mostly they're
Hmm.
male DOPs. I've not worked with so many. Actually, I haven't worked with any woman DOP. So it's a male domain. Uh, so I have to say him. So he becomes a very important person. And then for me is the producer. Who's the producer? That's another very important person because unfortunately my work is related to a lot of money. So there are budgets and there's approvals and this and that. So it's who's the most supportive because a lot of times for people the camera is very important, lighting is important, but art is not important. The space is like nikal lenge or whatever, or we don't need to spend on it. So it's
Hmm.
really nice when you're working with a producer who really values it. It's like, like I remember we shot mixed doubles where we didn't have much money, but Rajat said, in the next one, we said, oh no, we did Bheja Fry, and there was no money in it. And it was really frustrating. And I couldn't do anything. And it looked also like it's shit, in terms of art, it's shit. So you just feel so shitty after you've done something like that. Huh? And then he said, don't worry, in this film, I'll give you lots of money. Like, there will be money for art. And it was just so nice. I didn't have money. I could barely afford a chandelier for that film for one scene when Ranveer comes home. Uh, but
This is
it's just
RKRK.
the thing that, no, this is Mithya.
Oh,
In
okay, with
Mithya.
because
Like I'm talking
RKRK
about
seems like a
early
good
days.
budget.
It's still decent. It's just that I became more sophisticated in terms of putting things together. You also like learn a few tricks
Hmm.
and you also start getting a better team, all of that also. Uh, so, and I remember for Qala also, we didn't have much money. And I was sitting with the EP and he was like, how do we reduce the money? So I said, if you remove Art Nouveau from it, you can save a lot of money because that's going to cost, because everything has to be made. Uh, so then Kanu came in. Kanu is Karnesh Sharma, who's the owner of the company and he's the producer. And when in our early pre-production days, so you go wild, huh? You think of everything, possibilities. Because that time it's a free world, everything is for free. You can think whatever you want. So we've discussed all this, and he was very excited by this idea of Nuvo. And then he said, तो फिर ऐसा है कि फिर मैं ये पूछूंगा कि हम फिर फिल्म बना ही क्यों रहे हैं? And for me, that was just amazing because there is a producer who's saying, I'll put in the money for this. Even if I don't have enough, I will prioritize for this. And as a producer, if a producer is supportive of your craft, then you can really do things. You know, it's you're not struggling and you have a free mind and you are free to think within your boundaries, but your boundaries are defined not by constricting you. It's like, okay, this is my realistic figure. Normally, what happens is they tell you, oh, we have this much, and they actually have that much. So, what happens is like a fly in the bottle. You know, you only fly that much when actually you could have flown outside the bottle, but you've been told you cannot. You are just there, you know, and your story suffers because you're not letting the person think beyond a certain thing, you know, a certain thing. And in just being smart that, oh, this person, we are not kids in a candy shop where we'll go and spend and waste money, but you are limiting a person's thought when you say, okay, I can do this or not. So in that money, we could make lights, we could print wallpaper, we could embroider wallpaper, we could, you know, make all these doors and things in fiber, the walls in fiber, you know, the roses, all that. I could afford a team which could translate it for me, you know, like who were better workers, who were diligent, you know, who were sincere. All of that is so the DOP and the producer. And then the director, if he allows me.
But if you don't mind, I'll counter you for like one thing because I
Huh.
really am sort of curious to know about it. If you have seen Harish Chandrachi Factory, in
No,
where
yeah, I haven't seen it.
no, in where
No, I haven't seen it.
that oh, you haven't seen. Okay, there's a scene where
Yeah.
Dadasaheb Phalke is shooting a scene, as in it's a scene within a movie, and they place the camera, and in the backdrop there's a, I think, a jackfruit tree or something, and
Okay.
the DOP in the scene itself, the DOP says, but त्यावेळी फणसाचं झाड नव्हतं, like that time there was no because they're showing Harish Chandra like back
Oh,
then.
yeah, right,
So
right.
I think
Period.
there was yeah, period, so there was no jackfruit tree back then.
Uh,
And to which Dadasaheb Phalke says, जाऊ दे रे, story महत्वाची आहे. And he comes back to saying that
uh,
doesn't matter, like the scene or the
yeah,
narrative is
understood.
important.
Yeah,
So then,
it's
like,
important.
yeah, so is it sort
So
of,
that's what. So you balance it out. So
yeah.
you say where you want to spend your money and where you don't want to, and where it's important to fight that jackfruit tree or not. You know,
Hmm,
and that is your understanding between the director and the producer and everybody else. That is the balance.
got
It's
it.
like lots of times, like I remember in Mithya, I really couldn't afford much. But I was like, please, can you just give me one chandelier? You said I have a lot of money. Can I not? You're approving this, you're approving that. Give me one chandelier for the corridor. It'll just work, you know? So you beg for certain things and certain things you say, okay, I won't fight over this. This is not important.
Got it.
And the story is more important.
Yeah.
But
No,
it's
I'll,
like
I'll
the
come back.
Nouveau was,
Sorry. I'll come back to this question. Just one quick thing here. That isn't editor like an important stakeholder? Because what I at least
hmm,
understand with
not for me.
Netflix. No, I mean Netflix and other places where when you spoke about colors and tints, a lot of stuff is now done
Huh.
on like on the editing table, right? Just converting.
No, that's still the cameraman grading it later. It's still the so certain DOPs will call me for the grade
Hmm,
and certain won't. So it depends on person to person. But a few DOPs who I've worked with will call me for the grade
got
because the colors and all that are important. So if it's a collaboration, they will call and then you give your reaction to it. Because a lot of times they're also struggling with the director at that point because he's saying it's too dark. The DOP is saying no, it'll become too bright, or this needs to be lighter, darker, or whatever. At that point, also you come into the grade and see it, but the editor doesn't take care of that. That's the
Got,
DOP only.
got it, got it.
That's his final call.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. And the earlier question, just to follow up on the one, is that you mentioned that ek chandelier de do. So, how important is space, right, in your work? I mean, how do you decide when to make a replica, when to put an original one? Uh, it all depends on the budget itself, or sometimes if it's a tight close, you want a real one, or like I mean, is it based on the
Oh, you're
final
saying between
output?
a set,
Yeah,
between a set and a live location,
correct. No,
or
I mean
you're
multiple things which are there in the frame itself, right? Now it could be a whole continuity
uh,
of scenes, or maybe a single shot, or like obviously every thing that is put in the frame has got some thought behind it. Now you have options, right? I remember one scene which I had helped. So there was this film, Amitabh Bachchan film, Anil Kapoor, and I forgot the name also. They were doctors. So Amitabh Bachchan is sitting, and there's a bookshelf behind, and then the bookshelf had a lot of books in it. But and those were all medical books on very high end. So
hmm.
I was asked to do the spines of those book in Corel Draw, and then I put it on like cardboards, and then just put it everything. Now it was
Yeah.
like three nights and 3 days worth effort, but they could have hired and gotten like in whatever, like less than the money that is required, because it was just one shot. So how do you sort of decide when to keep something real or keep something like
How
fake
much
something?
money to wear? Okay. So a lot of things depends on so one okay. So there is this thing about how long the scene is. If the scene is just a few seconds in the movie, then I will not spend a lot of money on it because I already don't have much
Mm.
money. So I will shoot at a live location, a hospital or a court scene or whatever. I will not unless my story is based in the court or based in a hospital or something like that. It'll be live, one bedroom in a hospital, whatever. I'll go to a live location and shoot it there. I won't spend money in making that. If it is more than 6 days of work or 10 days of work for filming, then it's worth putting in the cost.
Mm.
The other would become like how important is it in the story? Sometimes it's just a very brief thing, but it's the turning point. It's pivotal to the story. Then I would make sure that that space is important and it's dealt with properly because that's the time when, as an audience who's watching, as a person who's listening to the story, I'm going to be most vulnerable, you know. So I need to make sure that that point it doesn't go wrong or it has the effect that it needs to be, kind of thing. Uh, and other times, set versus this is also what is it available or not? So lots of times, like we like eat for hotel rooms all over Bombay. You cannot find one that the director liked or that worked for the story because he wanted it from the lift to the corridor to the room and all. Make a set, if it works in the cost. Because there are some locations you just don't find which fit your story or the geography and things like that.
Mm-hmm. Got
Is
it.
that what you were looking at?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think, yeah, it's so if I have to sort of summarize, it will be mostly predominantly money as a criteria,
Yeah.
and second is availability.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
But then
Yeah.
like,
No, and also, yeah, because see, like Dum Laga Ke and Ankhon Dekhi and all work well because of the location, because you could get out and explore the cityscape. They've used the terrace in Dum Laga Ke, they've used the river, and things like that. And spaces are small, so you need to get out. And in Qala, it's always like dramatic and huge and large. And it was, yeah, it made sense to make it because If I had permission to shoot at the Vice Regal Lodge in Shimla, I would have shot it there. But that was not available.
Mm.
So then the thing was like, make it.
Correct, correct. Yeah, yeah. So I was saying for Kala, it was like some 1940s ka setup and
Uh,
Calcutta, and since it is designed or whatever, like specifically made for Netflix, I'm sure there's not a large screen showcasing, right? Uh, so I've
mm,
seen a lot of dark tints and not enough lighting, or I mean, it is according to the mood, but it's not
mm,
like the theme itself is not well lit, right? It's not like just
yeah,
uh, you
yeah,
know what I mean. So
yeah,
so
because, yeah.
so how does that happen? Because then you move places, or like in if you have a good budget, then you'll move. So everything depends on the budget. Is that what you're pointing to?
No, not at all, not at all, actually. The budget is a consideration, but the look is also one of the things. So, like, if you can't find that location, you make it. So that is the look. That's not a budget consideration. It's like we need the scale. We like in India there is no Art Nouveau. Like it did never come into our architecture. It came into little bits on the balconies, maybe a bit in the jewelry and things like that. But Art Nouveau architecture is not there in India.
Hmm.
So either you go to Brussels or you make it here. And then the story is such that it is anyway not real. It's so like emotional and distorted that a set would fit in better than finding a live location because you can dictate a lot of the mood with it. So the thing was that when she's in Calcutta, it's Art Nouveau, but when she is growing up, it's Gothic. And it is based on like the Viceregal Lodge of Shimla. Uh, the inspiration is from there of the Himachal House, and it's also that of the Dutch Golden Age. So if you see the Dutch Golden Age paintings, it's it's that whole thing of nature morte. It's that when there is something beautiful like a bright flower or whatever, there's also rotting fruit and there is a fly there. So there is something very beautiful and there's also something which is dying, which is rotting. And that was the thing for Kala growing up in this house where it's also grand and wonderful. But it's not nourishing. It's not something that is nurturing her, in a
Hmm.
good way. So that is the emotion between this. And so when you see the Dutch paintings, you see that the walls are dark. So when I was talking to Divan, who was the DOP on this, suggesting that let's not put light on the wall.
Hmm.
Like if the walls go into darkness, you shouldn't see it. Just like the Dutch paintings, and therefore a lot of reflective elements so that they catch light. And the beauty of reflective elements is that the darker you get, the nicer it is because it's just a glint. It's an idea of a presence and not seeing it literally.
Got it. Got it. Very very fascinating. मैं like इंटरव्यू के बाद कुछ पूछूंगा anyway. So yeah, I mean, I have just like last three questions. So what's most
हाँ,
satisfying as a creative designer? I mean, is it working on like large budget films like Hitchki or Shakuntala, or like आपका
no,
homegrown
not large
RK
budget.
bootstraps like RK?
इनमें से कोई बड़ी बजट का फिल्म नहीं है और
Acha. No, but generally like
अदरवाइज
the different scale, right? But
हाँ
yeah, like अगर like constrained हो तो ज्यादा मजा आता है कि like खुला छोड़ दिया तो ज्यादा मजा आता है.
खुला छोड़ दो तो ज्यादा मजा आता है बिकॉज द थिंग इज दैट गरीबी में तो हम जिए हैं बहुत
Hmm.
सारी रजत की फिल्में तो गरीब ही होती हैं एक तरह से हार्डली गेट्स एनी बजट फॉर हिज मूवीज
Hmm.
but and even earlier whoever like Sharad also never had big budgets and the thing is that on an indie film or on the small budget films the crew is really lovely and you are very collaborative and it's very small. I have never worked on a big budget film. I've
Hmm.
only worked on small budget films, but the fun of doing Qala or Bulbul was that one that I had, or even on any of Rajat's film or Sharad's films, is that I have complete freedom. And on Bulbul and Qala, it was not even realistic. I didn't even have to follow कि अच्छा ये पुरानी दिल्ली का घर है या ये बॉम्बे में बेस्ड है या it could be anywhere. It could be based in Italy for all you care, in that sense. Okay,
Hmm.
it's based in Bengal, but like, I am basing everything on everything, but there is a freedom of thought that happens, which is not limited by the director worrying कि ये सही होगा या नहीं, is it truthful or not? Um, so that is the fun when you're just let loose, and I am actually when I'm talking to you, feeling that I'm so privileged that I've had directors who've let me do it.
Hmm.
Very rarely have I had that where they don't trust you and then uh, your work suffers. I don't think you can work like that. When
Hmm.
someone doesn't trust you and then you are constantly having to support what you're saying or giving references. Because I remember one project I was working on and the director complained to the EP saying, she's not giving me any references. I don't know what she's doing. And,
Hmm.
like, is she working or not? And the thing is that for me, I feel I'm very instinctive. So you go to a certain place, it's like, I think if you pre-decide things and you show references, you lose like any chance of improvising and
Hmm.
any chance of finding a better thing. So for me, till the last day of prep before I go on set, I will not decide on what is going to be there other than the look in terms of the colors and the zones and all of that. That is completely planned. But what chair is going to come where, what lamp will come where, none of this is decided. Because for me, each, like your rifle, each prop is saying something about that character. I cannot pick it up from the book or from the net, usually. Because when I go out to source, I'll find it. When I go to Chor Bazaar, or I'm in the market or whatever, I'll find it. And that will seem true. And that should be the truth of that space, that character.
Hmm.
So it's very frustrating when people ask you for presentations and dockets and all of that because it's such a waste of time. Because I would rather spend time with you talking about your character, getting to know your character better, so that when I go out to create that world, I'm closer to who you want it to be. Because otherwise, I'm spending a lot of time just surfing, looking for references.
Correct.
And
Correct.
a lot of this world has now become about references, and you're so limiting your thought process by references. I remember going to meet this actor for a film who was a producer also, and I think the reason I didn't get hired for that job was because I told him that when I went for Dum Laga Ke to prep to finally start working on the set, I reached Haridwar and I was like, how stupid am I? Like, really dumb because I've not got anything with me. Normally, anybody who goes outdoors will take tempos and trucks of props from Bombay so that you know that you have a backup. And I've not taken anything. I know where my VHS tapes are coming from, my cassettes are coming from the shop because by 2013, 14, VHS tapes were extinct almost. So we
Hmm.
had to source all these things. And all that we've done. We've worked on the design, we've done the tambu design, we've done all of that, but nothing else. So now you start from scratch. You start going to the shops in Haridwar for the bartan. You go to Dehradun for the furniture. You see this bed in somebody's house while you're walking, and you go in and you ask them, please, can I take your bed? Or take your trunk? Or can I take your tea set? We'll give you a new one. So each house that I've gone into and gotten used stuff. So for me, one of the best compliments for Dam Lagake was when people came and said, I used to go in my childhood over there, and it reminds me of my childhood space. And I'm like, thank God. Because from the bag on the wall to the teacup is from the houses nearby. And that
Hmm.
is what non-planning does to you.
Got
So,
it. Uh, no, even we have a same state of affairs in our digital world. There's a website called Dribble, and
Okay.
people post their look and feel of the apps and whatever, and pretty much all
Hmm.
apps have started looking the same. There's nothing like, especially
Ah,
with other sort of guidelines from Apple and Google. You are
ah,
sticking to everything,
really?
and in fact, like sometimes Netflix also worries me, because they are coming up with a template as to 20वें मिनट पे like एक खून होना चाहिए या whatever.
Ah.
There should be
Oh,
edge or
yeah,
no
yeah, yeah.
movement.
Yeah, yeah, your cliffhangers and things like that.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
it's sad.
yeah.
Anyway,
Yeah, and this Google first page also. You know, this everything is Google first page. So everyone has the same reference at
yeah,
the end of the day.
correct, correct.
Yeah. Sorry, am I talking too much? Are we over
No,
time?
no, no, it's perfectly fine. Getting to learn a lot. Last two questions. What is like before, like the last one is actually a bit academic कि उसके ऊपर आते हैं, बट आपको क्या लगता है, व्हाट्स द फ्यूचर ऑफ प्रोडक्शन डिजाइन? अभी सब कुछ डिजिटल हो रहा है.
Just looking up, I feel. हाँ.
Okay.
पर क्या हो रहा है ना, एक अवेयरनेस भी आ रहा है.
नहीं, बट
ऑल्सो
क्रोमा पे भी ज्यादा हो रहा है ना, बहुत सारा ज्यादा, लाइक
अच्छा
एटलीस्ट.
वैसे, पर आपको फ्रीडम मिल गया ना. आपके पास क्रोमा है, अभी आप कुछ भी बना सकते हो. Now the world is your like imagination.
Okay, in
You
that
can go
also,
wherever you
then
want to.
so then you're saying
Then you're
even the
not limited.
graphics.
Everything is mine as a production designer.
Oh, okay.
I visualize it. So I create that world, like
Mm-hmm.
how these gaming people do. You know, it's like all that kind of level of work, which is actually more freedom. You're not even restrained by ये मिलेगा या नहीं मिलेगा. अब तो
Hmm.
मतलब और freedom है. बनाओ कुछ जो भी बनाना है.
Superb,
It's
superb.
upon you.
So ये तो आपके लिए पॉजिटिव है काफी. मतलब एज अ
Yeah,
फील्ड
yeah,
चाहिए.
yeah, yeah.
गुड, गुड.
Yeah, yeah, of course, of course.
Cool. And last is, as I said, थोड़ा सा एकेडमिक है कि आप, I know I generally hesitant asking this, but फिर भी, because it's kind of a new field, there's a lot of uh, opaqueness to what happens on sets, like especially for layman.
हाँ,
So if people have
okay.
to get into production design or become a production designer, क्या, like inherently, like any qualities or anything that you should be passionate about? Because मैंने नितिन बैद के साथ भी किया था एडिटर के लिए, कि एडिटर बनना है तो क्या करना है.
Okay.
So just I
So,
thought I'll ask you also कि any tips here.
ah, so one, I feel that this particular profession gives you the advantage of wanting to know and learn everything, from typography to textiles to architecture to printmaking to lighting to whatever. Everything that excites you in life, you can put into this. But mostly, I feel like for me, the greatest advantage was that I did photography for 10 years. And that really helped in knowing how the texture will react to this light, or how this lens will work for this depth, or uh, what should be, the mood, how this color will react in this temperature. All those things. So your visual, your photography, your idea of how light interacts with things becomes like a knowledge base. And so I remember when I just started doing photography also, there were two, three suggestions. One was that you should be looking all the time for a frame. So you're looking all the time. And even as a production designer, you're looking at it all the time because there's a combination of colors, there's a thing of how people put things up, how people live, where you go, you're observing. So, yeah,
Mm.
so the photographer's thing comes in here of just finding a frame. So even if I'm walking on the street today, for instance, I see this bluish pink bougainvilleas with a very deep red bougainvillea in it, and I'm like, oh, that's an interesting color combination. Or you're going on the road of Mahim to see Pipe and you see how the people live there. Or even on set, if you see how they hang the clothes, the workers on the walls, it's things like that. And everything is a pattern or a thing or whatever. So it's just looking for the frame, I guess,
Brilliant,
like
brilliant.
that.
Yeah. Yeah, I think this is a good note to
So,
end. There's a lot of exciting stuff that you have done, and also a lot to sort of still explore. But thanks a lot for giving your time. It was wonderful talking to you, and
no,
I
I
wish we
enjoyed
can
it.
just continue.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, that's it. Thank you. And that's it from today's Gyan session. For show notes and more Gyan, visit audiogyan.com. And if you wish to connect with me, I am at Audiogyan Moments on Instagram. Until then, take care.